Good morning, all online participants and those in the room here at Commerce. I'm Becky Ansa. I'm here to present with my team a lot of information today that will be very valuable when you are preparing Montana Coal Endowment program applications for submission in mid-May this year. We welcome everyone. We will be taking intermittent breaks throughout the session today to catch up with any questions that are coming in online and in the room. Please submit those questions. We will have to unmute, promote you, mute you, given the platform via Zoom that we are using today. This session is being recorded and will be posted on the website in upcoming days. The team members that will help you, that will provide guidance to you today will rotate throughout the presentation. We will have Matt Blank, Lindsay Harada, Linda O'Donnell, Erin Lee, and Ashley Amato. Please feel free. You're probably familiar with a lot of these, given that you're managing ongoing projects and we're looking forward to future projects coming in. So I'm going to turn this presentation over to begin going through our slides and presenting information about how to apply, required documents in your application materials, and how we will be analyzing that information that is presented to us. I'm going to turn it over to Matt Blank. We'll start the presentation and the speaking for today. Thank you, Matt. Thanks everyone for attending.
Good morning. All right, so for the eligible applicants, this will essentially go over what type of entity can apply for the MCEP grants. It can be any incorporated cities or towns, counties, consolidated governments, water and or sewer or solid waste districts. The water and sewer districts a lot of times will at least roughly line up with a CDP. So if your community is small enough where it can't fall into the cities and towns, a lot of times that's where you'll get into the districts with water and sewer districts. And then also tribal governments. Next slide. As for the eligible project types, we have drinking water systems, wastewater systems, sanitary sewer and storm sewer systems, solid waste disposal and separation systems, and bridges. With drinking water and wastewater, those can be anything from just some basic main replacements or like manhole replacements, fairly small, simple, like more upkeep type projects, cleared to being part of a funding package that can build a brand new treatment system. As for storm and solid waste, we don't see those often. I've actually only seen one storm in my time, which seems crazy, is approaching 7 years. So we do see those once in a while, but they are eligible and we do occasionally see those. And then bridges are other common type. Usually that we get 5 to 8 bridge applications to go along with all the water and wastewater ones. So they're a little bit less prevalent, but we still get quite a few of them. Next slide. As for the application submission, the deadline is May 19th, 2026 at 11:59. So basically just before it rolls into the new day. We will need a copy of the uniform application, MCEP statutory priority responses, the preliminary engineering report or PER, and any supplemental information that goes along with those and any appendices. And later on here, we will go into a little more detail on all of those items, along with our grants and loans portal. A little bit later on, we'll run through how to actually submit the application on there. And one thing to keep in mind is there is only one application per project per applicant allowed. Next slide. And as for with the water and wastewater systems, we do have the maximum amounts that can be applied for depending on target rate. So our target rate is set up on our website where you can go and look at what the target rates are for your community. Back to the district point, CDPs are also listed there. So sometimes the district doesn't perfectly align, so you may need to work with us a little bit there. But for communities that are just the actual incorporated city, we will have all those rates there. And to apply for a $750,000 grant, you would need to be at 150% of target rate. For 625,000, you would have to be at 125% of target rate, and to apply for 500,000, you would need to be at 100% of target rate. And keep in mind with that, that is at the end of the project. So if you're in a position where you're right in between the 125 and 150, but you know you need a big enough grant that you want to apply for the 750, you can apply now and then work those rates into place by the end of the project, whether that's just to meet ours or if there's a loan component that drives that a little bit. But as long as it's there at the end of the project, you can apply for those amounts. If you are under, we will put a condition in your ranking report that will tell what rate you will need to be at when the project is completed. And as for bridges, they are generally limited to 500,000. Occasionally we do see different amounts, but often based on the size of a lot of the bridges we work with, the entire project sometimes is under 500. So we do have a dollar for dollar match. So that's a lot of times what drives those bridges down to those lower amounts, because we'll have whatever the matching funds are, and the MCEP award be an exact 50-50 split to meet that dollar for dollar match. And next slide. So for that a funding amount to apply for, the way that target rate is calculated is based on the median household income for the applicant. And then that is what determines those target rates. And as I mentioned, those are what need to be charged at the end of the project. So that can be worked up throughout the project. And that's always a good thing to keep your grantees up to speed with throughout the process, because you don't want to have a situation where community is not well informed and then all of a sudden the project's ending and their rates are going to jump some substantial amount. And there are links here for both the target rate website and for our project grants website. And another thing that can occasionally happen is if there is no median household income published for your community, reach out to us and we can help you out with that. There's various things we can do. It's pretty rare, but I've seen it where we work internally and use census block groups to figure it out. It really all just depends on why there isn't one, how we would exactly work that, but we can definitely help you work through that if your community does not have that MHI. Next slide. And now for required documentation, I will pass it off to Ashley, and I will be back in a few more slides.
Hi, I'm Ashley, a program specialist with the Department of Commerce. Today I will be talking about some required documents that will be needed. Department of Commerce will need a complete application, which will include the eligibility screening checklist, MCEP statutory priority responses, uniform application, PER preliminary engineering report, a budget, implementation schedule, and authorization to submit application. Please be sure to double check that your uni app and application is signed by an authorized official. Next slide. Here we have the example of an applicant eligibility screening checklist. This will help ensure that you have submitted everything with your application, from confirming that you are an incorporated city, town, county, consolidated government, etc. Make sure that you have a project budget with a proper match. Certify that you have the listed documents like the PER and dates of your public meetings were held. You must also submit an MCEP eligibility screening list with your applications. Next slide. MCEP statutory priority responses will be covered later in this presentation. but they will be used to analyze and score proposed projects along with supporting documents that are submitted. Next slide. Again, these will be covered later on. Next slide. Here we have the uniform application. This is used by multiple funding agencies, but each applicant must provide a complete copy of the uniform application form for the Montana Public Facilities Projects. It is important to carefully complete the application, and particularly the financial information section, since the information provided in the form will be used to score the MCEP application on MCEP statutory priorities number 2 and 5. Next slide. This is what the new uniform application looks like. It can also be found on page 51 in the WASAC website. This has recently been updated and is much more user-friendly. You can find it a couple different ways. In your Google tab, you can search Montana WASAC, and in your URL, you can type dnrc.mt.gov/conservation/programs/WASAC. In the top right-hand corner, you can search for uniform application. Should bring up the first PDF link. You can open that, and that can be found on page 51. And that is all I have, so I will throw it back to Matt.
All right. So for a breakdown of the PER that I mentioned earlier, or preliminary engineering report, essentially this is just kind of a quick little bullet point list of what goes into a PER, the various parts. This is another thing that's available on WASAC's website. They have a much bigger breakdown that kind of goes really detailed into each of these categories. But for a quick breakdown of each, the executive summary is essentially an overall summary of why this engineering work is being done, and kind of runs through a brief description of the deficiencies and some of the issues going on with the system. And it'll kind of give a brief description of some of the things that'll be delved into deeper later on, such as the alternatives considered and why the specific alternative was chosen, cost estimates and such. So essentially that's just a quick breakdown. So if somebody isn't going to be doing a full review, they can go through that and get a rough idea what is in the entire thing. For project planning, this covers basically just the general area. This can cover the actual service, the location, some of the environmental resources that are present, population trends, community engagement. And then immediately following that, that will go into more detail specific to the actual facility that is being worked on. So that will have location map, that will have specifics for the project itself. It'll go into the history, because that's one of the things we see a lot around Montana is systems that are 60, 70, I mean, heck, even some of them are 100 years old that have parts that have had minimal or no work done. So kind of going into that history of when it was started, updates that have been done throughout time. And then going into condition of the existing facility. And also included in that will be financial status of that facility, because obviously there's a lot of operation and maintenance issues going on. Then that's going to cause it to be a lot more expensive than a new updated system would be. And then typically there are also like water and waste audits that go a little more in depth into what has been going on with the system. And then, as I've made pretty clear here, everything on this just kind of cascades into the next point. So next will be project need, which will kind of tie back into some of those things that were talked about in the existing facilities. One of the biggest things, which will get discussed more when we get into these statutory priorities, is the health and safety is going to be one of the biggest things. because that is going to really help your ratings with when we get into those priorities. But that will be what will be tied into project need, and then also bringing in that age that I mentioned before. And then also another thing that can be tied into this is reasonable growth, because we obviously don't want people trying to set up their systems for a growth number that will either likely or is unlikely to happen. But obviously growth does need to be worked in, especially with the way some communities in Montana are going lately. We want to be able to see that that is being planned out a little bit, because if a system is left identical in a community that's growing quite substantially, that can also be something that isn't ideal, because we obviously don't want a situation where we update a system and then almost immediately have the population outgrow the new updates. And then the next step, we'll be getting into the alternatives that are considered. So this will get into more of an in-depth description of each possible project that could be going on to get the whatever issue is identified in the need for project solved. So this will be the in-depth description, the design criteria, mapping out, especially when it's something like water lines, or if there's going to be, like, for example, like a new lagoon or new treatment, new wells. So mapping and such for that. An environmental process done, any land requirements. So that can be whether there's easements, lands needing purchased, anything like that. Any potential construction concerns, which obviously some of those will come up during construction, but anything that is known in advance should be shown in there. Any sustainability considerations. And then we want something that is going to be the most efficient possible. Usually when there's updates, that kind of thing is going to kind of come a little bit automatically, because it's going to help with any sort of O&M issues that was going on before. And then the next step is the actual selection of that alternative. So basically, that will be where you'll break down which of those was chosen and the reason behind that. And then that will tie directly into the next step, which is the proposed project, which will actually give a detailed breakdown of the actual project that was selected and the very specifics that'll go into that. And then lastly will be the conclusion, which will be a little bit like the executive summary, but it will kind of go through the reasoning behind what project was selected and which one was selected. And then that will include any other recommendations that might need to be considered in development of the project. Next slide. And then for bridge projects, it's pretty similar, but it's a little bit trimmed down, just because obviously bridge systems are a little bit simpler, because with a water or wastewater treatment, you're going to have a treatment plant and then lines. And I mean, there can be a lot of components. And then obviously with, like, there could be wells that are substantially far from the system. So there can be a lot of extra components there. Typically with bridges, there isn't a huge change. Usually they're built either in the exact same spot or right next to the old one, depending on if we want to have a temporary bridge put in or just use the old bridge till the new one's done. But usually there's not a whole lot of movement there. So it kind of goes through a similar process. You have the same style of executive summary. The problem definition will go more into specifics of what's wrong with the bridge. So that whether that's whatever kind of problems with the deck, or if it has weight limits, that's kind of a big one. And then going into similar with alternative screening. So that'll be things such as looking at different types of bridges that could be possibly used there. And then there's a more detailed analysis for each of those. And then similar to with the water and wastewater ones, you go into a description of the actual preferred alternative. So that'll be what type of bridge is going to be used. One other small thing that I missed there a little bit is for the problem. Detours can be a big thing, because obviously in rural Montana, there can be places where crossing a bridge can cut 20, 30, I think the longest I've seen was about 80 miles out of a trip. So if something has a weight limit, it makes something like emergency services have to take a massive detour. That can be in that problem too. But yeah, back to the description of the alternative, you want to have the type of bridge, things like I said there, where it's like, are we building it directly in the same footprint or right next to it? Just kind of an overall layout of how that bridge is going to be built. And then the last will be that actual recommendation and a plan for implementing that project. Next slide. And then for supporting documentation, this can be various things, any sort of orders or citation letters that have come from DEQ or EPA or anything like that. Sometimes they're fairly rare with bridges, but once in a while we'll see something from FWP if it's impacting a stream or a river or something like that. And then any sort of failures from actual residents, like for wastewater systems, sewer backups, if there's documentation of that, that can be a really big thing that can really impact that health and safety score and help the project get a better score on things along those lines. And then any sort of failure logs, whether those are directly at a residence or impacting one resident, and kind of ties back into that resident reports, or if it's more of a system-wide thing like water main failures. And then for the PER during that process, similar to the actual application process, you want to be keeping the public informed. So anything that was done for keeping them informed, so advertising, any public notices that were going on throughout that process, any code citations that are on the system, and then any sort of inspection reports and photos. Photos are big because if you can say, like, we've got broken mains, and then a videoing is done of the lines and you can see a nearly collapsed sewer main, that's obviously going to show that there are pretty major issues. And then cost estimates are also a big thing. So we want to make sure that the project, that there's a good plan in place from a budget standpoint, because obviously it's kind of tough to fund a project if the budget really doesn't seem in alignment. And as will be mentioned later, we don't have in-house engineers anymore. So we have engineers that we contract to actually do the review of the PER. So if they're looking at that and seeing that the estimates seem really out of alignment, that's going to be a little harder to score on priority 3, which is the actual scoring of the PER itself. Next slide. And now we'll take a quick break for questions, since we're kind of transitioning into a new section here with the actual application process, which will be taken over by Linda after any questions.
Do we have anything online, Ashley?
We do not.
Thank you, Matt and Ashley. And good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here in the room and online. My name is Linda O'Donnell, and I'm super excited to share with you our new application submission process and portal. And I know sometimes new tech isn't everyone's favorite, but I want to let everyone know, if you have any questions during this process or you get stuck anywhere, please give me a call directly and I will help walk you through it. We can do it together. So in this portal, you will be able to view program details, check eligibility, download required documents, and submit your application. You can find this portal a couple of different ways, on our Commerce website under Montana Coal Endowment applying for grants page, and as well as the link on the screen, montana.servicenowservices.com. So that'll bring you to this page. And the first thing you're going to need to do is set up an Okta account, unless you already have one. But so you'll click user registration on the left upper part of the screen, and you'll have to enter your email and your contact information and fill that out, what you see on the screen, and submit it. And then Okta will send you an email to that address. And before you can log in, you'll have to go to your email and verify your Okta account. If you try to log in before you verify it, it'll lock your account and you'll have to contact tech support, but all is manageable. Once you have your Okta account verified, you'll come back to this portal page and you'll click login on the top left. And that will take you to the next slide, please. So here you'll see citizen login and state login. So you'll click citizen login unless you're a state employee. So once you click citizen login, that will take you to the next slide. So here you'll see our popular grants programs, and you can scroll down and find the Montana Coal Endowment Program, or you can type MCEP into the keyword search and it'll bring up our program. You'll see the application open date, some details, and then you can click the blue link there and that will take you to our next slide. So here you will see again the application due date 11:59 p.m. on May 19th, 2026. And you'll see a description, more information about the midnight deadline on May 19th, and eligible applicants. So just some information there. And then if you click application forms, you'll be able to download the eligibility checklist, statutory review criteria, resolution to apply, the uniform application, and some other forms like the implementation schedule and budget are all there for you if you need them. So once you navigate around here a little bit, then you can click apply, and that will take you to our next slide. So your Okta information transfers to this page, and you'll scroll down and just kind of verify that. Here you can add other contacts. So if you'd like other people within your firm or the town or community to be added, you can add them here. And then you'll scroll further down and you'll have to certify what kind of project you are. Are you a county bridge project? You'll click that. And or you a city and town water project, or if you are a water project, if you're applying for both a water project and a wastewater project, just pick one or the other. You can only select one thing, but just click one. And then right below those, you'll certify that you have all of your documents ready. So you'll have to check those boxes and say, yep, I'm ready to start my application. Once you select those, you'll hit start application, and that takes us to our next slide. Here is, you'll see all of the contact information that you added, your what you've applied for. And if you see over here in the right hand part, you'll see that your state is just drafted. You're in a draft state still. These the amount requested will be filled out because you'll have entered that. So all of that will be filled out, and here you'll be able to attach your application materials. On the bottom of the screen, you'll see attachments, and you can add all of your documents there. You can add one large document or multiple small documents. We ask that you, if you do have multiple small documents, that you combine them into no more than 10. And you can do that by combining all of the statutory priorities and the related information and like the PER, those can all be separate, but just kind of try to combine them so they're to 10 or less. And then if you want to add additional contacts, you can add them under shared parties. And then once you've verified all this information, everything looks good, you can click submit application. You'll get an email saying that your application has been received. And this state up here will change to submitted. And then if throughout the process you want to log back in, check it out, you can see where it's at there. And that is it. That's it. And again, if you have any questions or you get stuck anywhere, please give me a call and I will walk you through it. I am here to help. And with that, I'm all done and I am handing it over to Erin Lee.
Good morning, everyone. Hello, and thank you for being here today for our MCEP construction application workshop. As Linda introduced, my name is Erin Lee, and I am an infrastructure program specialist with the Department of Commerce. Today, my colleague Lindsay Harada and I will be discussing the 7 MCEP statutory priorities and ranking criteria. Ranking applications on the 7 statutory priorities are done by following the MCA listed here on your screen. This MCA designates how the 7 statutory priorities will work. Applicants are required to submit narrative responses that describe the association of their proposed MCEP project, except where noted otherwise. Some priorities can be scored using the information provided in the Uniform Application and Preliminary Engineering Report, or PER. Supporting documentation should be provided to support the application and strengthen the score. For an example, if there are resident reports of failures or operation deficiency logs, this type of documentation should be included in the application, which can strengthen a case. Next slide, please. We will walk through each statutory priority individually in this coming presentation. Each statutory priority uses 5 possible point levels, with 5 being the highest level. However, statutory priority number 3 uses only 4 point levels, while statutory priority 6 uses only 3 point levels. Please refer to the Appendix B in the 2026 Construction Application Guidelines for an outline of the statutory priority maximum total points possible. Next slide. Statutory priority 1. This statutory priority is worth 1,250 possible points. Statutory priority 1 will review projects that solve urgent and serious public health or safety problems, or that enable local governments to meet state or federal health or safety concerns and standards. The Department of Commerce no longer has an in-house engineer, so we have procured engineering consultants who will be reviewing the PER to score this priority. Commerce engineering consultants are considering some of the following when reviewing the PER as it relates to water, wastewater, storm drain, and solid waste projects. Those are: does a serious deficiency exist in basic or necessary community public facility or service? Have serious public health or safety problems that are clearly attributed to this deficiency occurred or likely to occur? Is the problem existing, continual, and long-term, as opposed to occasional, sporadic, probable, or potential? Some scoring examples that pertain to water, wastewater, storm drain, and solid waste could be as follows. A level 3 score for a water project could be improvements such as replacing leaky water mains to reduce losses resulting in significant improvement in pressure, water quality, or fire protection. A possible level 5 score could be for a wastewater project, could be causes of a severe and frequent backups of wastewater into numerous basements, which have been documented, that would likely affect public health and safety due to its inadequate facilities. For a complete list of statutory priority 1 criteria, please refer to pages 30 and 31 of the MCEP 2026 Construction Application Guidelines. Commerce engineering consultants are considering some of the following when reviewing the PER as it relates to bridges. Is the entire county or a substantial percentage of the residents of that county seriously affected by the deficiencies as opposed to a small percentage of the residents? For a complete list of the criteria that must be addressed for bridges, please refer to page 31 of the MCEP 2026 Construction Application Guidelines. Next slide, please. Statutory priority 2. This statutory priority is worth 1,000 possible points. Statutory priority 2 will reflect on projects with greater need for financial assistance than compared to other projects. It is important to note that this statutory priority is data-driven by the bullets provided here on your screen and are addressed by the legislative guidance. Water and sewer districts or projects submitted by counties will only be compared to other water and sewer districts and counties in the financial assessment. Cities and towns will only be compared to other cities and towns. This statutory priority pulls information from the Montana Department of Revenue, American Community Surveys, Housing and Urban Development, as well as the rate information provided in Section E of the Uniform Application. Section E of the Uniform Application must list end results for both water and wastewater systems, even if an applicant is just working on one system. Please ensure Section E of the Uniform Application is complete for all systems before application submission. Next slide, please. Statutory Priority 3. This statutory priority is worth 750 possible points. Statutory Priority 3 assesses projects that incorporate appropriate cost-effective technical design and that provide thorough long-term solutions to community public needs. Like Statutory Priority 1, Commerce will use external engineering consultants to help analyze the long-term solutions and cost effectiveness of the proposed project. The information necessary to score this priority will be derived from reviewing the applicant's PER. Commerce engineering consultants are considering some of the following when reviewing the PER. Deficiencies to be addressed through the proposed project, just deficiencies identified with the most serious public health or safety problems. If not, please explain why the deficiencies to be addressed through the proposed project were selected over those identified with greater public health or safety problems. Additionally, for projects involving community drinking water system improvements, the applicant does the applicant have a water metering system for individual services, or has the applicant decided to install meters? In those cases where individual service connection meters are not proposed, has the applicant's PER thoroughly analyzed the conversation of water metering system and persuasively demonstrated that the use of meters is not feasible, appropriate, or cost effective? For a complete list of the criteria that must be addressed for Statutory Priority 3, please refer to pages 37 through 39 of the MCEP 2026 Construction Application Guidelines. I'd like to thank you for your attention today. This concludes my portion of the presentation on the 7 statutory priorities and ranking criteria. I'd like to now turn your attention to my colleague, Lindsay Harada, who will discuss the remaining 4 statutory priorities.
Thank you, Erin. Great job. Good morning, everyone. I'm Lindsay Harada. Welcome and thanks for joining our MCEP Montana Endowment Pre-Application Workshop. I'm the infrastructure coordinator here at Department of Commerce with Becky Anseth's team. This morning, I'll walk through the remaining statutory priorities 4 through 7. Statutory priority 4 focuses on long-term planning and management. Statutory priority 4 will be reviewed by Commerce planning staff, and our rank and review team will analyze their analysis of the information provided. The 2 major planning documents are a capital improvements plan and a growth policy. Having outdated documents may result in a lower score. What we're looking at here is if the applicant has demonstrated long-term planning efforts. Please feel free to include excerpts of any other relevant planning documents for your community please see page 40 of the application guidelines that Erin mentioned earlier for the complete list of criteria that needs to be responded to for statutory priority 4. Statutory priority 5 uses 5 possible point levels, with 5 being the highest. This has a maximum point value of 550 points. What we're looking at here is how many, a few components, how many other funding sources were considered and eliminated. Is a narrative provided that's strong and detailed about the funding sources that were examined for your potential project? Is this supported by documentation of correspondence with other funding agencies or commitments if they are already available? Are your MCEP funds critical to furthering the project? Emphasis on serious efforts that allow us to compare or rank your project to other projects is important. Please check out page 41 of the application guidelines for a complete list of the items that will need to be addressed for those responses. Statutory priority 6 uses only 3 possible point levels, maximum point value of 450 points. This looks at projects that provide long-term full-time job opportunities for Montanans, that provide public facilities necessary for the expansion of the business, or that has high potential for financial success, or that maintains or encourages the expansion of a tax base. So our commerce ranking team can understand that could be difficult. For example, how could a bridge project result in a long-term full-time job opportunity? However, we have seen past examples that have been successful in the past. Is there possibly business growth that can be demonstrated, or a new business coming to a community? This can support a higher score here. Or another possibility, is there a hard stop of a service being provided, such as waste service terminating at a location because a bridge is no longer accessible or safe? This could increase the score. We'll need documentation to support this, whether a new business or hard stop, for example, could be letters from business owners, community members, or even business plans documenting possible expansion. Statutory priority 7 uses 5 possible point levels, 5 being the highest, the maximum score of 350, looking at projects that are high local priorities and have strong community support. What we'll look at here is if the community is well informed about the project, and if any potential impacts on property owners' taxes, special assessments, or user charges that could result from the proposed project. Has the community been given multiple opportunities to learn about the proposed project, and even better, provide support or comments? High scores we see here where residential users are well informed and are clearly and strongly in support of the proposed project. Further, we'll look at if the applicant has held at least one public meeting within the last 12 months regarding the proposed project. Other things to consider is the audience of your community. Is a flyer at the grocery store, the bank, or the bar the best way to communicate with your community? The bulletin board at the post office, is that the best way to inform your community about this potential project? Or is there a Facebook page that's kept current for local community members with the happenings around town? Perhaps completing a petition to show support of the potential project. Little note on a petition, if completing, please include documentation or notes of how or where those signatures were solicited. Providing supporting documentation of the efforts will support a strong score here. Please provide copies of news articles, screenshots, social media comments, photos of that bulletin board that we mentioned, of the public notice, etc. Moving away from statutory priorities, but other components of a complete MCEP application, another piece would be a preliminary project budget. When building your project budget, a couple things to consider. What line items are called out for what funding source can be very important. Some funding agencies may have restrictions on certain items that they can or cannot pay for. Just things that you want to take a look at there. Other considerations, timing of funding sources like RD, Rural Development, or SRF, State Revolving Loan Fund. Typically, those funds aren't available until construction bids are open. So what funding sources are targeted to be used in the early stages of your project to pay for design, engineering work, grant administration, to get your commerce contract and get that moving and underway. These considerations have an important impact on your scope of work that's written into your commerce contract. Hence why it's really an important part and thoughtful considerations to be taken here. The next component of a complete MCEP application that we'll need to see is a preliminary implementation schedule. Each application must include a implementation schedule that describes the overall schedule for the project, including engineering and construction. Your implementation schedule is a lot like a roadmap of your project. It outlines specific tasks in a chronological order: design, then construction bidding, then construction, finally closeout. Things to keep in mind as you create your implementation schedule: seasonal construction peaks, winter weather impacts, supply chains, contractor availability and capacity. At the time of contract execution, Commerce staff will confirm the project implementation schedule is updated and reflects current conditions, and the implementation schedule will be incorporated into the MCEP Commerce contract, hence why it's very important. A template of the implementation schedule is provided at Appendix D in our application guidelines available at the Commerce website. The last component of a complete MCEP application I'll walk through this morning is the resolution to authorize submission of your MCEP application, a seemingly small but very important piece. Each application for MCEP funds must be accompanied by a signed copy of a resolution to formally adopt the MCEP application. If applicable, a resolution should include if the applicant has committed any amount of matching funds as proposed in the MCEP application. And again, going back to the guidelines and website, we have a template for your use there for a resolution. And again, a reminder that this must be signed. On our next summary slide, so we've walked through all of our components of a complete MCEP application. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention joining our training today. I'd also like to thank our team. You've done a wonderful job today, and I thank you all. Again, a reminder, we look forward to seeing your applications coming up just before midnight on May 19th. And I will open it for questions and turn it back to Program Manager Becky Ansa. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. This is Becky Ansap again. Thanks, everyone, for your time today and learning about the very important, critical components of an application for program eligibility and looking at funding opportunities. I'd like to thank all of the team members for wonderful presentations, outlining the requirements and how you can present a proposal that we can consider and make recommendations for funding through the legislative process with awards happening spring of 2027. It is a long process, very important improvements into the communities in Montana and access to quality water, quality wastewater, quality services for all of our residents. So thank you for all of your time. If you have any project-specific questions that we can help address in a one-on-one meeting or a phone call, please don't hesitate to contact myself or any of my staff, and we will help you walk through any challenges you may be experiencing while putting together an application piece or potentially surveys or income or target rates, what the MHI for your available community is, which can be a critical component to have an opportunity to submit an application. Please don't hesitate to contact us. I thank everybody for your time today. Here's our information on the screen right now. Get a hold of any of us if you have questions. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Anything online? Any questions online?
Nope.
Seeing none, I think that's a wrap on a Friday morning. Enjoy the sunshine this weekend.